Canto number 8. There is so much going on in this canto. We have a major transition. We get to talk about Lord of the Rings for a moment. We have a first apostrophe. Uh, Dante addresses a personal vendetta, and also the cosmic civil war is going on here. So first up, the Tower of Dis. Um, as you recall, in the last canto, we were just kind of walking along the river Styx in the fifth circle, and uh, we came up to this place where there was a tower. And now we'll need to cross the marsh to get to the tower, to get further down into the sixth circle. And at this point, they see three specific flames, and one of them I'll talk about in a minute, but it's mentioned at the same time as this one. There's two flames atop the tower of Dis, this large tower. So should kind of explain what this tower is. At this point, everything inside of hell is inside of a city, and there's this sort of guard tower. It's not really sure, or it's not really clear if it's like a guard tower right out front, or if it's like a central tower where, like, like the ivory tower in the middle of a authoritative city might sit in, in that sort of imagery. But this is a good example of how you can use like modern literature to think about things from the classics, because the Tower of Sauron from Lord of the Rings, with the Eye of Sauron on the top, it's called the Barad-dûr, I think. So one of those orcish words. But yeah, the city of Mordor is very much like the city of Dis, where you have this big tower at the top, where there is the all-seeing eye, and these two flames at the top. In this comedy, I don't think these are like watchful eyes or anything like that, but the Lord of the Rings has been so iconic that it can almost change the way that you can read the comedy, because it puts these two flames at the top of the tower, and later we learn this will be in, I think it's in Purgatory, where we talk about this, but the flames of hell are actually God's love, and they burn off the badness of you, like the cherubim's swords. The reason why the cherubims have these flaming swords is because to protect anything bad from coming into the garden. So you have to go through that process of cutting off anything sinful to be able to enter the Garden of Eden. And we'll get to those cherubims as well. The Garden of Eden and everything's coming up as well. But those flames can be seen as the presence of God. And I think they're supposed to be seen as the presence of God. I just don't think they were supposed to be an all-seeing eye of sorts. It's just to say that, in retrospect, as you read further, you'll realize that these flames that were atop this tower were the power of God. That is basically like this point that kind of looks down all over the following circles. So I just think it's kind of a really interesting point that Mordor is kind of shaped a lot like the city of Dis, and we know Tolkien was a Catholic, devout as well, and so I mean it's not surprising at all. There's a lot of Christian imagery inside of his stories. But yeah, so that's just kind of like the image that they're walking up on. They see this big tower. It's across the river, and there's another flame, and it's kind of way off in the distance, and it comes shooting up like as fast as an arrow. And this is going to be Phlegius. This guy is, let's see, let's get a little bit of, oh yeah, he's the son of Ares, which is a god of war, the king of Thessaly in the Greek myth, and he's here because he's been transformed into a demon. Like we've seen that happen a lot in the previous cantos, where Greek gods will be turned into demons, because that's what the Christian mind would do with them. Like, it wouldn't say, or the medieval Christian mind would do with them, would say that, or even in the early church, they definitely got to this as well, that, our God is the one true God, and all those other gods, not that they're not necessarily real, they either might be our God working, or they're probably a demon. So you see a lot of that going on. So Phlegius is coming in as a demon here, and the reason why he's here as a demon, if you'll recall, this is the fifth circle that we're in on the city of Stix, which is the Wrathful and the Sullen, where we saw all the Wrathful on the top of the river, and there's Sullen down underneath that we can't see. So the reason why Pelagius is here is because he is a wrathful guy. He kind of had justice for it. Apollo forced himself on, Pelagius' daughter, and in response, he burnt down Apollo's tower at Delphi. Yes, Delphi. So, yeah, that was a wrathful act. Now, maybe, justified, but a lot of innocents were involved, I'm sure. So, he's here because of his wrath. But yeah, so we got this new ferryman. So he's kind of a lot like Karen from before. But this one doesn't really give our heroes much trouble. He comes up and he starts like calling out to Dante, and he's like, I got another one. And then Virgil kind of says this kind of slick line to him, like, nah, he's not even real, man. And then Pelagius gets a little bit upset about it, and he's like, this isn't the way things are supposed to work. But he doesn't require any divine will to be pushed past. Like, who was it before? Minos gave us a lot of trouble. He had to be pushed on past. The list goes on. We've covered them before, but so this particular demon is just angry. He's just like, this is not cool, but whatever. Get in the boat, let's go. And there's a lot of imagery about how the boat is a lot lower because Dante has weight. So typically there's just shades going into this boat. So now he's got this, they're cutting lower in the water than any other boat. Apparently there's other boats out here too. So Pelagius isn't the only ferryman. He's just the one that showed up for Dante and Virgil, I guess. Let's see here. Yeah, so we're on our journey across the river Styx here. And this is where we see a pretty crazy scene. They're going along, and Dante recognizes one guy, and he's like, yeah, let's go check him out. I hate this guy. And it's this guy called, Filippo Argenti. Filippo Argenti. And then this is a guy from Dante's past. He was one of his political enemies. So this is, like we mentioned before, a lot of people might say that Dante was kind of a petty author, and the whole point of this was to just get a last word from his exile. And this is a part where they would point to, because this is kind of exactly what he does here, to be honest. He points out Filippo. We go over there, and Dante just talks a bunch of trash about him, and then he tries to get out into the boat, and Virgil just like pushes him to the side, and they go away. And as they're going away, Dante and Virgil are just talking trash about this guy, and all the wrathful souls are like, beating on him and stuff, and then he kind of sinks down, and I think we see a transition here, and it's where a soul is actually changing location in hell. But he doesn't go a whole circle, but we're constantly going lower and lower and lower and lower in this. And on this fifth circle, we have the wrathful up here on the surface and the sullen underneath. So we see our guy Filippo here. After he's beyond the dead, one of his political enemies, or not beyond the dead, from life into the realms of the dead, to just take it to him another time. It's like he's defeated, and he becomes sullen. And I think this is trying to tell us that you might even be better off being wrathful than sullen, because even though wrath isn't great, it's probably more corrosive to the soul to hold all of that, sullen defeat inside of you and carry it around. So this is just kind of an interesting point there, I thought, with the him transitioning, and it's almost like Dante went into hell to push his enemy down yet a little bit further. And him and Virgil are just like, yeah, that's what he gets the whole time. Like, there's no shame about it. They're just like, yeah, that guy is just not cool. So there's that little thing. And then we come up. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything there. Let's see. All right. The only other thing to add there is that we kind of see Dante involved in sin here too. He is very wrathful in his disdain of Filippo, and even Virgil too. Virgil and Dante are both kind of being, I would say, not good people at the least at this point. And what does this really mean? Maybe perhaps they feel justified in their action because Filippo's such a bad guy. I'm not real sure. It's trying to show us something there. Maybe it's just trying to remind us that we can be this way as well. But it just kind of seems it's just a very weird thing right there. How sort of uppity Dante gets there with his enemy here. There's also a story where this guy actually slapped Dante in public. So this is if there's one guy that he didn't like in the war because he was a black Gulf. So even after the Ghibellines they came, the Gulfs finally won, and then they had to split. So they were probably knew each other very well before they became enemies, or maybe they weren't ever really. They were just kind of frenemies, they're fighting for the same side, and then once it came time, once they won, he was probably these two guys' relationship might symbolize, or not even symbolize, probably just was a lot of problems that came from like the secondary war right after the first one. So let's see here. Yeah, so now we go along the river a little bit more. Nothing happens. They just talk more about what had just happened back there with Filippo, and they approach the city of Dis. They get off the boat, and the boat, comes up. They're very clear about the boat goes up and down. They mentioned it several times, and so they get out, and then who is this one? Phlegius just takes off, and they're just left here at the city of Dis, and our guys are pretty confident at this point. I actually think that their ability to move past Phlegius so easily was to give us, the reader, a false sense of confidence. As you'll recall, we're actually on this journey with Dante. Not in the physical sense, but he is. This sort of thing is sort of written in a way that it's meant to be recited to the person reading it. Like we were to imagine Dante's in the room telling us a story, or on stage telling several people, or however you imagine it, but we're actually inside of the framework of this story. Like the reader is a canon character. So we're going to have a lot of that kind of come together right here, because we're going to get our first apostrophe at this point, and I think we're meant to have a false sense of confidence at the same time. So keep those two ideas in mind, that we got a false sense of confidence and Dante's about to speak to us. So we go to the gate, and this is where we see the Civil War bit, because the fallen angels, they're described as fallen from above and all that. They're certainly the angels that were involved in Satan's fall. So they're out here, out in front of this gate, and they're still raising hell, so to speak. And Virgil tries to will past them, as he typically does, and they shut him down completely. This angers Virgil, and Dante gets pretty scared. And that's when he speaks to us. He says, think reader, whether I lost heart on hearing those cursed words, for I did not believe that I should ever return on earth again. So Dante's like really scared at this point, because they've been able to move past, and now the demons have commanded that Virgil come into the gate, and Dante go back home on his own. So Dante's faced with that possibility that, this is the one moment that he's the most scared. So, and this whole thing leads us right into the next canto. So this is like a kind of a build-up. We come in with false confidence, and then all of a sudden we get pushed down pretty bad, and the demons tell us to go home, and we're keeping Virgil. well, they don't necessarily say he has to come in. He can come if he likes, but Dante should go on home on his own. But Virgil doesn't abandon him. Dante says something like, "Oh, protector of mine for 7 times, would you not abandon me?" And he's like, "Of course I'm not going to abandon you, Dante. Of course not. You're my boy." So, they have a little moment of kind of like, this is, we're good friends here, and he tells him that to not worry, at all. These things happen. If we have faith, we have faith that this journey is willed, so something's going to work out. So just, and the reader's meant to think that Virgil's having a vision of sorts here. Like, he can actually see that he sees a solution, but he doesn't want to share it with Dante just yet because he's not quite sure exactly what it will be. And I just have one little fun fact here, is that this guy, Filippo, is involved in another medieval work right about this time. It takes a little bit of story. The guy from the last one, from the Sixth Circle, Chaco, the guy who was the pig hog guy, he plays a joke on Filippo in this, on something called the Decameron by Giovanni Boccaccio. I actually ordered it because I got to see what it is, so I'll talk about it at a later point. But it's pretty interesting. So, like, Chaco plays a prank on Filippo, and he reacts in this kind of the same way that he is on the river. Like, I guess he becomes very rambunctious and punching at random. So, I don't know. Something along those lines is in that story. So I picked it up because I really want to see it. So that's something to look forward to. But yeah, the events bring us right up to Canto 9. So there's like no time lost between 8 and 9. Dante's still scared, and Virgil begins to doubt their aid. He knows it must be coming because those heavenly ladies from the second canto, Mary, Lucy, and Beatrice, of course. Yeah. So the 3 ladies have offered their protection. So he's like, this is gonna have to work out one way or another. And Dante gets a little worried because he's like, what is he saying? Like, Beatrice is gonna have to come down here to hell to pull me out of here? I think it doesn't quite say that, but he says he was a little bit more worried because he thought that something even worse was gonna happen by those words, that the 3 ladies have protected us. So Dante was like, oh, that's things are about to get worse. But you would think it would be better. He's about to see Beatrice, but maybe didn't want to see her down in this condition. But that's not what happens. So while we're sitting here and they're a little bit upset, if you knew the Aeneid, which I didn't, I had looked this up. But in the Aeneid, this is about as far as Aeneas will get in his journey. He'll walk around Dis, but he won't actually go into the city. And at the same point that if you knew the Aeneid, you would be reminded that, because we just got to this sort of scene where, good people aren't allowed in. Like, the demons kind of keep the good guys out. That's why Dante can't come in, but the pagan can. That'll be fine. The reader is reminded of that if you know of that. And then Dante starts asking Virgil, like, well, how deep have you been into hell? Because Dante must be thinking, well, this is probably about as far as Virgil knows what's going on. Because, maybe he's seen glimpses into it, but he's never actually been into this place. And Virgil's like, well, there was one time where I did go all the way down to the ninth circle. He got summoned by a necromancer witch by the name of Erichtho. 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 And so he has actually. So here we find out that Virgil's actually done this walk backwards before. Like, he got summoned down to what they call the Ring of Judas, because that's where Judas Iscariot is at, the ninth circle. He got summoned down to the Ring of Judas to collect somebody's soul for a reason or another, and then he had to travel back up to all the way to what do they call that place? Limbo. So if you're interested as a literary person reading this and you're just thinking, I wonder if Virgil has ever been this far down, Dante immediately brings it up. So that just kind of shows like his real smooth kind of way of doing things. So that happens. They have their little chat, and while they're chatting, these three Furies come out of a tower. If it's the tower or a tower, I like to imagine they come out of those flames, like, straight out of the Eye of Sauron, so to speak. So you have these three Furies attack, and they let's see. We got Electo, Megaria, and Tisiphone. They represent different things. Electo is like uncleansing, implacable. Mega Era is a jealous one and grudging, and Tisiphone is an avenger of murder. And they are the handmaidens to the Queen of the Underworld, which would be Plato's wife, or Dis's wife, or Satan's wife, or Lucifer's wife. That figure. Blanking on her name right now, but the Queen of the Underworld would be the wife of all four of those figures in their different places they belong in historical context. But these are her handmaidens, and they come down here, and they remind me of harpies. And the reason why is because harpies are in video games often. So I've played plenty of video games, and there's always these ladies that come down, and they're described as basically nasty ladies with snakes for hair, and stained, or their skin is stained with blood. Like maybe even looking a bit corroded. They're just these evil kind of creatures, So they instantly reminded me of the harpies as I was reading them, but they're not. They are these are godlike figures. So, but yeah, they come down and they start tormenting our poets, and this kind of turns into a battle. They're like calling them out and saying different things, and they're really just they're being real mean, I guess. And they threaten to summon Medusa, and this is kind of like the climax of it here, because even Virgil's like, he keeps reminding Dante, you must muster your courage and all of this as we come through, and at this point he's going to be like, oh no, Dante, turn away, and they're doing their summon of Medusa. They're going to bring her here, and she's going to come out and turn everything in her gaze into stone. There's also thousands of people around here too, outside of the gates, by the way. So, and then just at the very height of this, there is an eruption, like an earthquake, which, if you recall, I had a question about an earthquake when Jesus had come to Inferno, or not to Inferno, well, it is Inferno, but he came to Limbo that one time. I think when the angels come, they break the earth, like there's signs of an earthquake left behind, because this angel comes in with extreme noise. Like, I don't know if it doesn't say anything about trumpets, but I think it's like, angels are heralded with a trumpet, but I think it's just that the noise would be so loud. Like, maybe there aren't literal trumpets in these descriptions in the Bible. They come out, in earthquakes, it's going to be loud. So yeah, the earthquakes, and this angel comes out, and he's described as a messenger, so clear sign, I think, that he is Saint Mike or Saint Gabriel. So he's got to be an archangel, I think. There's no clear consensus on that because he's not named, but the messenger. So yeah, Gabriel comes here, and he's got a little wand, and he just like taps it on the door, and it's like some of those souls that are kind of crowded around are like blasted away, and the threat is immediately ended. Those those Furies, I don't recall exactly what it says what happens to them. I think they're just either not mentioned or they run off. Let's see here. Yeah, heavenly messenger door. Okay, yeah, and I like this scene because this is a good one. Like it's a good one to highlight, especially the. Uh, this is we're on an epic journey, and the epic is the hero's journey. But here we're seeing the lover's quest, or the lover's salvation. So this is a perfect scene to really sort of size these things up. In a typical epic, this would have been sort of a fight scene. You might have had Hercules out dealing with some kind of whatever. I don't know. Hydra maybe. This is the perfect fight scene. Like this is like where this is in the place of an epic. We're getting a scene like this rather than a fight scene where the weapons are will, love, and moral fortitude, and they're being battled against with let's see, temptation, hate, and moral corruption. So yeah, this scene right here really kind of shows you like what's going on, what kind of genre this is really. Like, this is an epic poem where there's extreme climaxes and near deaths. Because if Dante would have been caught in the gaze of Medusa, he'd have been turned to stone, just outside of the city of Dis, like forever. Like that's not. He wouldn't be able to continue, his path and all of this. And of course, his path is willed, so we know it's going to happen. But it's scary. So let's see where we're at here. Yeah. So now everything's kind of saved, and Gabriel comes. He saves the day, and we are able to advance on into the city. The gate is opened. They go in, and they see these fiery tombs inside, and that's going to give us sort of like the intro into the next canto. They see the fiery tombs and all, and Dante's just kind of like, oh, what could this be? He's very wide eyed. We're kind of right back into confident Dante. Like, if you recall before on the river ride across Stix, he was almost flamboyant, and then like he gets here to the gate, and it's like, oh no, we're gonna die. And now he's just like, all right, let's get back to work. We got a journey to get onto. So he gets back to moving. Comes in here real wide eyed, and the burning tombs is what leads us in to the next canto, which is going to be canto number 10. All right, so this canto is a little bit. It's boring to me. I don't like canto 10. It's just lame. And also, I feel like a Dante apologist because this whole thing is like we're dealing with a Ghibelline leader here, who he calls a heretic, and there's no real telling if this guy was actually a heretic or not. So there's that. Let's just get into it. We go into the sixth circle and we come into these fiery tombs. So we get in there, and Dante's looking over stuff, and this guy named Farinata delle Uberti. I'm not going to be able to pronounce that, but we'll call him Fairy. So he gets to talking, or he sits up in his tomb, and he's like, hey, you're Dante. And Dante's like, yeah, that's me. And they get to talking about heresy, but they're not really talking about heresy. They're talking about politics. And really the whole message here is that if you aren't a real good Christian, you're going to have bad politics. So I think it's kind of implied that if you don't agree with Dante, that your politics are probably bad. Maybe I'm not reading this one right, but, like I said, if you're going to play the role of a Dante apologist, and if anybody does, I do, like, it's like, this is a bad one. Like, we don't talk about Canto 10. Like, like, it's bad, really. He because there is, let's see, where is this guy? Epicurus. He was a philosopher, kind of in the Platonian times. Like, I believe just after Plato. His dates, he was born sometime around 340 BC and died 270. And I think that puts him just after Plato. I might not have my dates right. I don't know. But he was in this kind of the same era, and he must have been after Plato. Must have been, of course. What am I saying? But anyways, he had this idea that everything was material. Let's see. Core beliefs of Epicureanism is fundamentally materialistic, asserting that everything, including the soul, is composed of atoms. This led to the denial of afterlife or divine judgment, which was a significant departure from traditional Greek and later Christian beliefs. Epicurus taught that the universe operates by natural laws devoid of divine intervention, promoting a rational understanding of the world to achieve peace by mind. So basically an atheist. Which is fine. You know, if you're an atheist, that's fine. I'm not a hater of atheists, but you do often see, you know, Christians, especially medieval devout Catholics, that would do something like, if you don't agree with me politically, you must be an atheist. You know, believe in God. So that's why I'm saying I think this guy may have even been a good Christian or whatever. And now he's down here in the heretics because Dante's trying to make a point that bad politics means you must have bad religion. And that may not be his point, but that's what I got out of it. And there's a little bit more going on here. They're having their little conversation, and this guy, Calavacant, another guy who is actually one of Dante's friend's dads. And he referred to his friend Girdo in the past tense while talking to this fairy guy, and you know, his father said, I was like, what do you mean? My son's dead. And it's kind of like a little comedy moment here where you've got Farinata. He's just like, he's not concerned at all with this other guy who's concerned about his son's death. He's just sort of like, as I was saying, you know, while the dude's trying to get Dante's attention. And Dante doesn't even give the guy the attention properly. He just goes back into talking about politics because that's so important. And, you know, we're talking about the politics. And then as they're parting ways, he does kind of like apologize a little bit. And he's like, hey, could you tell your guy over there that his son's fine? He's my buddy. You know, it's all good. And I think it's kind of just a shout out to his friend there. And maybe he knows his dad too. Or knew his dad, because obviously he's dead. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for that canto 10, and that wrap up this video. That's 8, 9, and 10, so that's 3. There's just not too much more to say. Canto 10 is just kind of a lackluster canto, but 8 and 9 are 2 of my favorites. You know, I really like the whole, you know, lovers battle scene. That is so great, you know, like nobody's throwing fists or anything, but they're just kind of like, they're just being real catty, I guess, you know, kind of, yeah, get away from our gate. And it's like, oh, you won't leave, I'll turn you to stone. It's like, oh no, not stone. And then the angel comes in, and yeah, but yeah, that's it. One last note, of course, thanks to my resources, Mark Vernon, Durling, and Martinez. I've also been looking at the Longfellow. I got this book here. This thing is pretty nice. It's got the Longfellow translation, but that's not really what's too interesting in this. It's got a lot of these like full pages from Gustavo. Oh, you can't even see it. It's got over 100 of these, just images of different lines from the poem. And they're from Gustavo Dore, and become quite a big fan of his recently. He does a lot of interesting stuff. Perhaps I'll do some videos on some of his stuff, maybe. But yeah, that's it. Hope you all have a great day. Bye bye.